Hello, my dear students. How are you all? I hope you all are happy and well. Dear students, tell me one thing. Do you bully someone? What would you do if you come across someone who has a habit of bullying others? I know you must be thinking that why I am asking you these questions. I know that nobody likes a bully who enjoys making others suffer. Dear students, our today's chapter is related to bullying. The name of the chapter is The Ghost of Magnus, and it is an interesting chapter. The excerpt we are going to read is taken from Roald Dahl's famous book Matilda. It is about a little girl named Matilda and how she teaches a mean and selfish Miss Agatha Trunchbull a good lesson. So let's read. The Ghost of Magnus. After lunch, the class reassembled. Miss Honey stood at one side of the room. They all sat silent, apprehensive, waiting, and then, like some giant of doom, the enormous Miss Trunchbull strode into the room in her green breeches and cotton smock. She went straight to her jug of water and lifted it up by the handle and peered inside. "I am glad to see," she said, "there are no slimy creatures in my drinking water this time. If there had been, then something exceptionally unpleasant would have happened to every single member of this class. And that includes you, Miss Honey." The class remained silent and very tense. They had learned a bit about this tigress by now, and nobody was about to take any chances. "Very well," boomed Miss Trunchbull. "Let us see how well you know your 3 times table, or to put it another way, let us see how badly Miss Honey has taught you the 3 times table." Miss Trunchbull was standing in front of the class, legs apart, hands on her hips, scowling at Miss Honey, who stood silently at one side. Matilda, sitting motionless at her desk in the second row, was watching things very closely. "You!" Miss Trunchbull shouted, pointing a finger the size of a rolling pin at a boy called Wilfred. Wilfred was on the extreme right of the front row. "Stand up, you!" she shouted at him. Wilfred stood up. "Recite the 3 times table backwards," Miss Trunchbull said furiously. "Backwards?" stammered Wilfred. "But I haven't learned it backwards." "There you are!" cried Miss Trunchbull, triumphant. "She taught you nothing? Miss Honey, why have you taught them absolutely nothing at all in the last week?" "That is not true," Miss Honey said. "They have all learnt their 3 times table, but I see no point in teaching it to them backwards. There is little point in teaching anything backwards. The whole object of life is to go forward." "Don't you get impertinent with me, Miss Honey," Miss Trunchbull snapped. Then she turned back to unfortunate Wilfred. "Very well, boy," she said. "Answer me this. I have 7 apples, 7 oranges, and 7 bananas. How many pieces of fruits do I have altogether? Hurry up. Get on with it. Give me the answer." "That's adding up." "That's adding up," Wilfred cried. "That isn't the 3 times table." Miss Trunchbull shouted. "That is the 3 times table. You have 3 separate lots of fruits and each lot has 7 pieces. 3 sevens are 21. Can't you see that? I will give you one more chance. I have 8 coconuts, 8 hazelnuts, and 8 monkey nuts. How many nuts do I have altogether? Answer me quickly." By now, Wilfred was far too frightened and bewildered even to speak. She caught him by an ankle and held him dangling upside down like plucked chicken in a shop window. 8 threes? Miss Trunchbull shouted, swinging Wilfred from side to side by his ankle. 8 threes? Miss Trunchbull shouted, swinging Wilfred from side to side by his ankle. 8 threes is the same as 3 8s, and 3 8s are 24. Repeat that. At exactly that moment, Nigel, at the other end of the room, jumped to his feet and started pointing excitedly at the blackboard, screaming, "The chalk! The chalk! Look at the chalk! It's moving all on its own!" So hysterical and shrill was Nigel's scream that everyone in the class, including Miss Trunchbull, looked up at the blackboard. And there, sure enough, a brand new piece of chalk was hovering near the grey-black writing surface of the blackboard. "It's writing something!" screamed Nigel. "The chalk is writing something!" And indeed it was. It was writing Miss Trunchbull's first name, Agatha. "What the blazes is this?" yelled Miss Trunchbull. It had shaken her to see her own first name being written like that by an invisible hand. She dropped Wilfred on the floor. Then she yelled at nobody in particular, "Who is doing this? Who is writing it?" The chalk continued to write, "It's Magnus." Magnus was Miss Honey's late father. Everyone in the class heard the gasp that came from Miss Trunchbull's throat. "No!" she cried. "It can't be! It can't be Magnus! Give my Jenny back her wager! Give my Jenny back her house! Then get out of here! If you don't, then I will get you! I am watching you, Agatha!" Miss Honey, at the side of the room, glanced swiftly at Matilda. The child was sitting very straight at her desk, her head held high, her mouth compressed, and her eyes glittering like 2 stars. For some reason, everyone now looked at Miss Trunchbull. The woman's face had turned white as snow, and her mouth was opening and shutting like a halibut out of water, and giving out a series of strangled gasps. The chalk stopped writing. It hovered for a few moments, then suddenly it dropped to the floor with a tinkle and broke into two. Wilfred, who had managed to resume his seat in the front row, screamed, "Miss Trunchbull has fallen down! Miss Trunchbull is on the floor!" So students, after lunch, the Trunchbull comes in as scary as ever. She checks her water glass right on the desk and says that any bad behavior will be met with really strict punishment. Then she moves on to math problems, which spells instant doom for her first victim. Sure enough, she calls on a poor kid named Wilfred and says he should recite the 3 times table backwards. Can you imagine? Backwards. Wilfred can't, and Miss Honey doesn't think he should have to. What Miss Honey thinks doesn't matter though, and the Trunchbull continues torturing Wilfred with more math problems. They are technically multiplying, but they sound like adding. Wilfred is totally confused and can't do it. The Trunchbull furiously yells at him, picks him up by his foot, and starts shaking him. She is just screaming the right answer when Nigel interrupts her. And this interruption is pretty important. Nigel yells that the chalk is moving independently. Even the Trunchbull looks at it. The chalk starts writing on the board. It writes, "Agatha." This freaks the Trunchbull out completely and totally. Then the chalk keeps writing, saying it's Magnus. Knowing Miss Honey sees that Matilda is lit up with special energy. The chalk keeps going, instructing Agatha to return the house and money to Jenny. Then it says Magnus is watching her and will get her if she doesn't obey. Oh boy, everybody else is confused. But the Trunchbull struggles for air and falls over in a dead faint. So students, this is all for today. We'll meet in our next video. Till then, stay home, stay safe, stay happy.